right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I have for you guys today, Sam Sulek kind of confirms what his future competitive plans are going to be going forward. So in his most recent Instagram post, Sam says he's shutting it down, the competitive season is over for him, and it's time to grow. Then he also says looking forward to next year's Arnold Classic. Now, the reason why I think this kind of confirms that he's planning on doing next year's Arnold is, A, I'm sure he's going to be there anyway to do the expo, to do a meet and greet, to do the photo op stuff that he does. But B, the Arnold Classic typically, and I know they do this for bodybuilding for sure, I don't know if the other divisions they always do it, but I'm sure in Sam's case they would. Typically, the Arnold invites the previous year's winner of the amateur to come compete in the Open Pro the following year. If you look at the scorecards for men's open bodybuilding this year, you'll see that name at the bottom of the list, Hussein El Asawi. He was last year's amateur winner that gets the invite to the pro for this year. And I think this is probably a smart strategy for Sam because the Arnold is kind of a unique show in the sense that they invite who they have compete. You don't have to qualify for it. And it's kind of an interesting mix of guys, whereas if Sam wanted to get to a big show like the Olympia, he'd have a little bit of a harder path of doing that. But I also don't think Sam wants to do a show that's kind of a smaller show because there's a lot more classic physique shows than there are men's open shows. And a lot of them are smaller, more local shows. So I doubt Sam really wants to, get criticized for winning maybe not that competitive of a show or picking not that competitive of a show. If he waits till the Arnold and he does well, nobody can really say, well, it was just because it was an easy show. Now, the other reason I think this is a good idea is because Sam says in his caption he wants to grow, which I think most of us would agree he needs to. I mean, to be a pro in classic physique is completely different than looking good as an amateur. And he competed in the Class C. So I wanted to talk about this for a second, too. So Class C, classic physique as an amateur, which is essentially just between 5'11 and 6 foot, you can weigh 217 pounds. Now, as a pro, that weight limit increases. So those rules change as a pro. And for that same category, 5'11 to 6 foot as a pro, he can weigh 227 actually at the weigh-ins. So he can add 10 pounds of stage weight, 10 pounds of muscle before the next time he competes. And that's going to take him some time. And I think that's probably the smart thing to do is take like a whole year between this Arnold and the next Arnold to just focus on building up his physique to be better the next time he steps on stage. Because, like I said, even though there's a lot of people kind of bestowing the crown of this guy is the future of classic physique to Sam Sulek already, I think there is some work to be done before we can talk about Sam as being a competitive, top-level, high-level pro. And for him to wait till the Arnold to prove that, I think is probably the move. And I also think that most of us agree for an amateur, the second time that he stepped on stage to win his pro card in 2 weeks, it was deserved. It's good to see all the pros, all these industry guys, Chris Bumstead, all giving him like words of encouragement, words of support. I believe Chris even went up to him in one of his YouTube vlogs and said, you're making classic physique exciting again, and saying how great he looked. All that is cool and exciting, but I think it's admirable that Sam is taking a step back and saying, not just jumping in, with all this hype and saying, I'm just going to start competing right now and do a pro show right away. I like the fact that he's able to step back from the spotlight that he was just under, even with all this praise that he's getting, and say, okay, it's time to go back to work. I'll be back, potentially in 2026. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you think Sam will do well if he does do the 2026 Arnold Classic? And what do you think the future holds for him as a pro? It'll be interesting to see because, like I've said before, it's interesting from the perspective of him starting out as a pro without really a lot of incentive to win shows and be a successful pro. Like, yes, the ultimate title of winning the Olympia, I'm sure, appeals to Sam. But financially, he doesn't really need any prize money. He doesn't really need any, supplement company sponsorships that are going to come from competing versus that would already come from his YouTube stuff. I think my question is more like, how driven will he really be at the elite level? But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Now, next up in the news, Brandon Curry, according to Muscle and Fitness, which is now owned by the Olympia, Brandon Curry, I guess, has already committed and signed up for the Masters Olympia 2025. Now, there's been a lot of speculation going around already about this 2025 Masters Mr. Olympia. And, of course, you got the Kai Green announcement a few weeks ago where he teased another comeback. So I'm already seeing people speculate, could we see Brandon Curry and Kai Green go head-to-head in the 2025 Masters Olympia? And I ran into Kai in the hallway of the hotel room at the Arnold, actually, and I was asking him about if he's actually going to come back and compete. And, of course, the answer that he gave me was kind of neither a yes nor a no. But Brandon Curry apparently has already committed to this show, and it kind of makes me wonder if Brandon is going to retire after this show, go out on a high note. Now, top 4 at the Arnold Classic was still a very impressive placing for him. I thought his look overall was pretty good, definitely an improvement from the Olympia. And I think the biggest thing was that William Bonac beat Brandon at the Olympia. Brandon came back and beat Bonac at the Arnold, so definitely an improvement. 5 placings higher than what he placed at the Olympia. But I think the question is starting to become, as Brandon gets older and as he spends more time with his family, is the possibility of him winning another Arnold or another Open Olympia still on the table? And if Brandon were to retire, it seems like going out on a high note with a show like the Masters Olympia, which I think he has a really good chance of winning. It gives him that opportunity to kind of go out on a high note. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. But the other thing that I was thinking about with the Masters Olympia is I don't even know how many people noticed this, but they didn't even do the Masters Olympia last year. And I think even I barely noticed that they didn't do it. So if you remember, they brought it back in 2023. They brought back the Masters Olympia, and it had been like over a decade since they had held the Masters Olympia. And there was all this talk and excitement about, the Masters is back. And that was 2023. 2024, they didn't even do it, kind of quietly. And I don't even know that anybody really noticed that. And as of right now, it's slated for the weekend of August 9th this year. So it is on the schedule, and kind of strangely, it's in Tokyo, Japan, which is kind of random. So it's not even the same weekend, not even the same month, not even the same country as the regular Olympia, which is kind of odd. Maybe they just didn't have quite the turnout that they expected in 2023. Like, there wasn't that many big names even doing the show. And I kind of wonder, with Brandon now confirming that he signed up and he's doing it, I wonder if they would maybe incentivize somebody like Kai to do a show like that. Because while I still don't feel like we'll ever see Kai on an open bodybuilding stage ever again, having that Masters with the age category, and Kai being almost 50 years old, Brandon being 41, if Kai ever did come back, I would think this would be the thing he would do. And I guess maybe he hinted in some interviews over the Arnold weekend that he was thinking about it or something to that effect. But I still kind of doubt it. I just saw quite a bit of conversation about it on social media today, Brandon versus Kai, potentially at the Masters. And, I don't know how likely that is, but Brandon is confirmed for sure. Now, next up in the news, another series of physique updates from Sergio Oliva Jr., looking very impressive and still leaving a lot of people wondering what his next show is going to be. Now, he said in the comments, he was responding to a comment of someone asking him, what's your next show going to be? They asked him if it was going to be FIBO, and he says his next show is still undecided at this point. Now, he looks like he's in relatively good condition. He doesn't look like he's, crazy far out from competing. And I think there's a lot of people excited to see what he's going to look like. It's been, I think, slightly over a year since we've seen him compete. But I think these updates that we're seeing from Sergio are giving every indication that he's going to be competitive. He's looking great. And I think all of us are excited to see what the next show is going to be and how he's going to look there. Right on the horizon, we've got so many opportunities to see some big names. Starting with Detroit. Detroit's going to be the next big show on the schedule at the very end of March. I believe it's the 29th. Right after that, you've got the Arnold Classic Brazil. You've also got the New York Pro, the Pittsburgh Pro. There's a lot of guys that we haven't really talked about either since the Olympia or even before that And guys that weren't even in the Arnold, some of the top names that we haven't had the opportunity to really discuss, we're going to see a lot of those guys competing at these next, 4, 5, 6 shows. So just be ready for that. At the end of March, that's really going to kick things off. There's that little gap between the Arnold and Detroit, and then once Detroit, that ball starts rolling again, and we're going to have like those, every week almost open competitions. Now, next up in the news, I was just watching the recap that Tyler Manion did of the Classic Physique division at the Arnold, and I thought this was a really good recap for a couple of reasons. He talked a lot about Logan Franklin, and I think a lot of us, watching this, even going into the show, we were talking about, like, what is this going to mean for defining the standard for Classic Physique, and Tyler kind of spoke on that. And what I mean by that is, like, in the absence of Chris Bumstead, who's the new guy going to be? What are they looking for? And Tyler kind of confirmed that they want a more muscular Classic Physique like Mike Sommerfeld, because in his discussion about Logan, he said, one of the compliments that he gave him, I think, was probably one of the best compliments you could get from a guy that's judged so many shows and so many top physiques. He said Logan's conditioning was one of the best conditioned physiques he can remember seeing at a show ever. And this guy has judged the best of the best. So that's a pretty lofty compliment. And he says that really it just came down to, when you're talking about Logan and Mike won because he had more volume overall with the muscle mass that he carried. And he said with Logan specifically, Logan needs to add a little bit more muscle to his chest, more muscle to his back. And he said when Logan does that, he thinks he'll have even better results. So I think that kind of confirms directly from the source what the judges are looking for going forward in Classic Physique. Like I said, we saw these comments going into the Arnold. Is Mike Sommerfeld too muscular? Is he too much like a open bodybuilder from a muscle mass perspective? Is this still classic? And the judges are saying yes. So they want a more muscular physique winning these shows. So if you were wondering what Logan Franklin needs to do or needed to do to win that show, it looks like they're just looking for a more muscular package, and Logan, just an overall muscle volume, just didn't compare to Mike. Well, I shouldn't say didn't compare, because I thought Logan looked great. It was just an apples and oranges comparison. And I even saw a clip of Chris Bumstead going up to Logan Franklin backstage and saying that he felt that Logan was the most classic physique on stage here at the Arnold. And I personally cannot wait for the Classic Physique Mr. Olympia this year. And I was jumping around, different Instagram pages and stuff, and I was looking at the Brazilian bodybuilding pages just to kind of see if there were any updates on Ramon. And there was a recent update of Ramon saying that he has no interest in pursuing Open, confirming that he will be pursuing 2025 Classic Physique Olympia, even though he sat out the Arnold. Because that's one thing we got to think about here is you're missing Urs, you're missing Ramon, you're missing Terrence. Obviously, Chris has never done the Arnold, but he wasn't there. Breon is kind of a guy that's typically there, even though he's now done with Classic Physique. And you talk about the judges maybe preferring a more muscular physique. Ramon is apparently weighing 122 kilos as of right now, which is roughly 268 or 269 pounds. So pretty big classic guy. We just talked about earlier in this video how Sam Sulek will have a weight limit of 227 as a pro, which I believe might actually be the same weight limit for Ramon, now that I'm thinking about it, because Ramon looks like he's either 6 foot or under from meeting him in person. And Ramon always has quite the crazy cut going into a show to make weight. But it'll be curious. I'll be curious to see how this plays out at the Olympia once we see, these guys that looked great at the Arnold in the mix with the top Olympia guys, Urs, Ramon, Terrence. Because it does seem like the result at the Arnold and the result at the Olympia, at least the past couple of years, don't seem to really be consistent with each other. So I still don't think it necessarily means that, I think Mike probably is the favorite for sure going into the Olympia. Mike Sommerfeld being the runner-up at the Olympia last year and now winning the Arnold, he probably is the favorite going into the Olympia now to be the next champion in Classic Physique and try to fill the shoes of Chris Bumstead. But I don't think anything's set in stone yet. I think it's going to be an all-out war for that top spot at the Olympia this year. And I think everybody is coming correct. Now that Chris is gone, who's going to be the heir to that throne? That's what I'm most excited to see in 2025, is who's going to be the next guy in Classic. But that's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.